Imagine being invited to dine with your king, a feast of honor, friendship, and loyalty, only to watch your own death served on a silver platter. This isn't a fantasy tale dreamt up for television. This is the brutal, chilling true story of the Black Dinner of 1440. A feast so treacherous, its echo inspired legends centuries later. Even the infamous Red Wedding finds its roots here, inside the walls of Edinburgh Castle. Picture Scotland in the mid-15th century, a kingdom torn, bleeding from decades of internal strife, a land where peace was a fleeting whisper and power was a bloody game played by ruthless men. At its heart sat a boy king, James II, barely 10 years old. A monarch in name, a pawn in reality. He wore the crown, but the true power belonged to grasping nobles. Men who pulled his strings like master puppeteers. And at the very top of this treacherous pyramid stood one family, feared above all others, the Black Douglases. Wealthy beyond measure, with armies that rivaled the crown itself. Their leader was William Douglas, barely 16 years old, the same age as boys still playing games of war. But William was playing no games. He commanded vast armies, owned more castles than the king. His influence stretched across half of Scotland. To the ruling council, he was untouchable, and Sir Alexander Livingston, the ruthless guardian of the king, William Douglas, was too powerful. He was a threat that had to be neutralized. They wanted him gone. And so the conspirators set their plan in motion, drafting an invitation to Edinburgh Castle, a gesture of friendship. William Douglas, at 16, wielded power that dwarfed most kings. His wealth was staggering, his pride immense. He was the wealthiest man in Scotland, save for the crown itself. The revenues from his vast lands, from rivers, forests, and farms, were unmatched. He owned the strategic keys to the kingdom, commanding crucial castles and ports. William often acted without the king's authority, ignoring royal summons and levying taxes as if he himself wore the crown. He represented a parallel, untouchable kingdom. To the regents, Crichton and Livingston, the threat wasn't just power, it was sovereignty. They could not defeat him in open battle. The war would be too costly. They needed an elegant, surgical solution. A betrayal disguised by the sanctity of royal protection and fueled by the promise of peace. They manipulated the young king into sending the invitation, using his own innocence as the bait. The invitation was sealed with the ultimate pledge of safety, the promise of the crown. The air around Edinburgh Castle was thick with tension, not just fog. The very stones seemed to wait, silently anticipating the betrayal. The Douglas brothers rode unknowingly toward their doom, believing in the king's seal, the most catastrophic mistake of their lives. The banquet was magnificent, a spectacle of medieval excess and opulence. Gold goblets clinked, rich roasted meats filled the air with their scent. The young King James, surrounded by what he believed were friends, smiled, hopeful for peace. William and David, initially at ease, partook in the revelry. They were honored guests, but as the night deepened, a subtle chill began to creep into the warmth of the hall. The laughter grew more forced, the smiles less genuine. Crichton and Livingston watched their prey, waiting patiently for the moment to strike. Every gesture, every conversation was a calculated distraction. Then, as if on cue, a sudden, chilling silence fell over the grand hall. The laughter died, Every eye turned. A servant entered, slowly, deliberately, carrying a silver platter draped in black. All eyes followed him. He approached the king's table, his steps echoing loudly in the sudden void of sound. The air grew thick and cold, anticipation curdling into dread. And then, with agonizing slowness, the servant reached the table. The cloth was removed, revealing its gruesome contents: a black bull's head. In that horrifying moment, all confusion vanished. The message was ancient and terrifyingly clear. It was the unmistakable Highland symbol of death. Your life is forfeit. You are marked for execution. The brothers realized the chilling truth. This was no feast. It was an execution dressed as a dinner. The hall erupted into a silent, frozen panic as the trap snapped shut. The young King James II, horrified, cried out. He begged for mercy for his friends, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The regents, cold and unmoved, ignored their king. William and David Douglas were seized violently. Their terror was palpable. They were dragged from the feast, away from the flickering torches. The boy king, powerless, was forced to witness the betrayal of his court. The heavy doors slammed shut, their cries swallowed by the cold stone of Edinburgh Castle. Dragged from the warmth of the hall, the brothers were forced into the unforgiving cold of the castle courtyard, their fate sealed. Under the desolate pre-dawn sky, a grotesque mockery of justice unfolded. A mock trial. Baseless accusations hurled against two young boys. No evidence was presented, no defense allowed. There was no mercy here, only the cold, hard certainty of their imminent end. The executioner, a silent, grim shadow, stood ready. His axe, dull with purpose, waited for the command. And before the sun could even dream of rising over Edinburgh, the lives of William and David Douglas would be extinguished. Their youthful lives were brutally cut short. Their blood, mixing with the rain, washed into the ancient, uncaring stone. But the betrayal did not end the Douglas power. Far from it. This act of barbarity only ignited a furious, bloody thirst for vengeance. The feud between the Crown and Clan Douglas would explode, spilling rivers of blood across Scotland for generations, a brutal legacy born of a dinner invitation. The architects of the Black Dinner, Crichton and Livingston, believed they had secured their power, but their triumph was short-lived. The shadows they cast that night would extend far beyond their grasp, reaching even the one they swore to protect. As for King James II, he never forgot that night. The boy who wept in terror grew into a king haunted by guilt and the fear of hidden enemies. The Black Dinner did more than just claim two young lives. It carved a deep, unhealing wound into the heart of Scotland. The event destabilized the entire kingdom, proving that no noble was safe, no alliance unbreakable, no promise sacred. King James II, the boy who cried helplessly, grew into a king as ruthless and cunning as his former regents. He learned their lessons well. He never forgot the betrayal. Years later, he exacted his own vengeance upon the very men who orchestrated the Douglas murders. Crichton was eventually stripped of his power, his fate a harsh lesson in the fleeting nature of courtly favor. Livingston met a darker end, executed for treason. The wheel of fortune had turned brutally for all involved. The Black Dinner stands as one of history's most shocking acts of treachery, a permanent stain on Scotland's past. Its legacy, however, extends far beyond the blood-soaked stones of Edinburgh Castle. It is widely believed that this very event heavily inspired one of the most infamous scenes in modern fiction: George R.R. Martin's Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. The echoes of that gruesome feast, of hospitality violated and innocence destroyed, found new life in a fictional world. A testament to the enduring human fascination with power, ambition, and the ultimate cost of betrayal. A chilling lesson written in blood. In the ruthless game of power, even a simple dinner invitation can be a meticulously crafted path to a gruesome end. A reminder that sometimes the true horrors aren't found in fiction, but in the annals of our own history.